Like Senator Daly, first of all, I want to wish both of you the best of luck. And as Paul said, Joe would have been in front to us many a time here, and he's a Galway man like myself. But the question I would ask, and ironically, while you were talking with Paul there, this week's price of cattle came up in front of my phone, and I was just looking down through it, and I just saw that there wasn't 5 cents. You know, everyone, ironically enough, every market we must have in the world at the moment is the same price everywhere, because I was just looking at the price of cattle. Do ye feel, both of you, and this is a question to both of you, do ye feel that the legislation or the tools or the wherewithal is there now, that if there was a fear that in any industry or in any part of the agricultural industry, that there was a fear that there was cartels going on, that you have basically the tools and the legislation to go in and do whatever you need to do to root it out?
Yeah, thanks, Deputy. And look, that has been a long since argument of the all within a few cent. And you know, I did the markets reports for the Farming Independent for about 15 years, and it was, you know, there was very little difference a lot of the time. Now, suppliers never have any problem if it's a good price, you know, that they're all on a very similar price, because when all is said and done, they're generally going into very similar markets. So if one of them can get one price, there's no reason why the next one can't. As I said already, we're not involved in pricing, but I think it's very important that people have adequate information. And there's lots of different information out there, but it's I think one of our roles will be to pull all that information together, so that, you know, obviously you mentioned beef. 90% of our beef is exported. Half of that is now going to a country outside of the EU. You know, and our office is replicated right across the EU. So when it comes to EU, we have, I suppose, the structures there in place to follow up and work with our fellow sister offices across the EU. The likes of the UK isn't in the EU, but there's adequate information there as well. We could pull off information from the likes of Borbia, for instance, who have lots of information in that area. And I think our job is to pull all that information together and work with, like, we are independent, we're an independent board, to work with whether they're the suppliers, the processors or the retailers, to try and I'll probably mention it a few more times here, that there's fairness and transparency right across the food chain, and that everyone sees a future in their respective part of the food chain. And hopefully that will include the suppliers getting a fairer return from the consumer.
Part of the question I want answered is, do you feel that you have the legislation that if there was that you felt there was a cartel going on, can you go in and investigate that?
Yeah, I think we have the powers to do quite a bit. And what's also there is that as we're working, like, we're a new office, but as we're progressing our work, if we see a weakness in the legislation that's there, we can make representations to the Minister to have that legislation strengthened. So, and Niamh, if you want to add anything to that.
Thank you, Deputy. So the new office of Honourable Ollie Agrivia will work within the powers and the functions that have been given to it under the 2023 Act. To answer specifically your question in relation to, I think you're referring to competition law. The Act, as it stands, does not. We don't have a role in competition law, in that this, I know this was discussed a lot through the legislative process in terms of the CCPC actually have that role, if you like. I think what our role is in that space, if you like, is that in the course of our work, if we come across any practices, say, for example, or anything we feel doesn't quite look right, if you like, we can pass that on. Of course, we've a duty to pass that on to the relevant authority. I would say also that we're very confident in terms of the powers that the regulator does have in terms of enforcing unfair trading law, and that's a significant part of ensuring that fairness and transparency in the agricultural food chain.
Thanks, Chair.
But I think one of the things that Niamh mentioned there is very important, that in the course of our work, in relation to, as you say, a monopoly and a lack of competition, we are able to pass that on, and it's very important that we pass that on to the relevant authority, which is the CCPC.